Welcome back to Crime Documentary. The person in the photo is Edward Shin, whose Korean name is Shin Young-hoon. He grew up as the only son in a devout Christian family who had immigrated to America. His parents were quite wealthy, and their son developed exceptionally well. Shin was always diligent in his studies and built good relationships with friends around him. Not only was he academically gifted, but he also demonstrated impressive athletic talent and was well liked by many. On weekends, he never missed church services and Bible study classes. To his parents, Shin was a great source of pride. Even after becoming an adult, graduating from college, and starting a family, he maintained a strong faith, enthusiastically participating in religious activities and volunteer work. A wonderful opportunity came to Shin when he met Joseph Gray in his Bible study group. Gray, who ran a lead generation company, offered Shin a position in his business, impressed by his diligence and reliability. Shin joined the company and gradually built a solid position as the accounting manager. While working there, he met Christopher Smith, who was in charge of marketing. The two worked together and gradually developed a close collegial relationship. Smith quickly recognized Shin's potential. This guy is really capable, and decided to maintain a good relationship with Shin so they could pursue a greater goal together in the future. That goal was entrepreneurship, something Smith had dreamed of for a long time. To elaborate a bit more about these two individuals, they were very different in their professional domains, with one handling accounting and the other marketing. Their personalities, appearances, and lifestyles were also quite different. Shin, as the finance manager, always wore a neat suit. He was married with 3 children, maintained a stable family, and remained enthusiastic about church on weekends. In contrast, Christopher was a single man. He had a freer spirit, enjoyed making friends, and spent time with them comfortably, enjoying surfing, an energetic personality. On days without special external meetings, he preferred wearing comfortable jeans and t-shirts to the office. Nevertheless, the two trusted each other, seriously planned their startup, and finally took action together. Let's quit our jobs. And subsequently they established 800 Exchange, a digital marketing consulting company. They promised to run it together with a 50-50 ownership split. By the way, what did this company do? They made proposals to other companies. If your company advertises online in this way and sets up a strategy like this, your sales will definitely increase, and your brand will also become more well-known. Leave that to us. In other words, they provided marketing strategies and were paid for it. Here, the two founders leveraged their strengths. Christopher was in charge of marketing and sales, while Shin was responsible for finance and company operations. But the company's revenue was astonishing from the start. Joseph Gray, who had appeared earlier, became their first client. And the results here were remarkable. Rumors quickly spread throughout the industry, and many companies placed orders in succession. In fact, after establishment, the company's revenue increased by more than 100% each year. As a result, both had plenty of money. A truly bright future lay ahead. At this point, Christopher was the happiest. Just as I thought, I found a capable partner like Shin and reached where I needed to be. His sense of achievement was immense. But there was a truth that Christopher didn't know. Shin had an evil side that only he knew about. In reality, Shin was addicted to money. He would do anything for money. Since childhood, he had declared, "I will become a millionaire before turning 30. But reality wasn't easy. To achieve this goal, the method he chose was unimaginable for an ordinary person. He created an alias named Curtis and called his own father with a disguised voice. "I've kidnapped your son. If you want to save him, give me $1 million. Yes, he staged a fake kidnapping. But his father wasn't easily handing over the money, causing him to repeatedly send emails demanding payment. This led to his failure. When the police traced the IP address, "This is an email from this house." That meant a family member had caused the incident. When all criminal behavior was discovered, his parents finally cut ties with him. Even after that, Shin's nature remained unchanged. In fact, Earlier I mentioned that he was very enthusiastic about Bible study, but there was another reason. Even there, he only approached people with money and influence, treating them more kindly than others. That's how he met Joseph. He even had a criminal record for fraud using these relationships. He became close to Sue Kaufenberg, a woman who ran a magazine company. At that time, her husband was in the final stages of cancer, and she wanted to sell the company for $1 million and enjoy her old age comfortably. Upon learning this, Shin approached and portrayed himself as the right person. Until then, he had been known as a Christian and a diligent father, and the couple trusted him and decided to hand over the company to him. But the problem was that when it came time to sign the contract, Shin changed his mind. He said he didn't have that much money and would pay in 4 installments. But he also demanded shares, saying he needed them to become a director. At this point, the couple might have been a bit naive and transferred the shares to Shin. In reality, transferring shares is like handing over the company. And then what happened? Shin made excuses that he couldn't make payments each time. He was just stalling. The couple felt disappointed and proceeded to sue. At that time, Shin hired someone to go to the couple's house and threaten their lives. When the couple learned of this, they said, "I shouldn't be involved with him anymore. We're about to retire, and I don't want to die." Subsequently, they withdrew the lawsuit and didn't get a penny back. On the other hand, Shin had no intention of running the company from the beginning. In the end, he sold the company at a cheap price and made a large sum of money without doing anything. By this point, you can see his cruel side, and that he didn't hesitate to do anything for money, despite outwardly being a kind Christian. A golden opportunity came to Shin. Fortunately, he met Christopher, and then this person said he wanted to start a business. They left together, and it was a huge success. The company grew rapidly and was flooded with money. At this time, Shin began to reveal his true nature. The starting point was the casino. From a certain day, instead of going to church on weekends, he began going to Las Vegas. Initially, he brought about $2,000. In fact, Americans generally like casinos, so he started playing with the intention of enjoying Las Vegas after a long time and was also ready to lose money. But was it beginner's luck? He hit the jackpot. And then, with that $2,000, he got a large sum of money. From then on, Shin became crazy about casinos. He was addicted. Until then, he had been an expert with money, so gambling seemed somewhat easy for him. And if he succeeded a few more times, he had the illusory feeling that he would touch more money. The scale of the bets increased, and finally, as predicted, he spent all the accumulated money. At this point, he had turned his attention to the company's money. But here, instead of taking money accumulating in the company, he overcharged marketing costs to client companies and embezzled the difference. The accumulated amount reached nearly $900,000. He excitedly went gambling with that money, but right at that moment, someone saw him. It was Joseph, the director of a very important client company. Joseph coincidentally saw Shin gambling, but in front of his gambling table, there were piles of chips worth tens of thousands of dollars. Seeing this, Joseph began to suspect, does he have that much money? This led Joseph to review the details of the marketing costs his company had been charged. And there, he discovered that money had been leaking. Joseph angrily informed 800 Exchange that they must compensate. Thus, Christopher, the co-founder, also knew everything. First, he was angry at the betrayal of a partner he completely trusted, but above all, he worried that if rumors about this spread in the industry, who would hire them? They could go bankrupt in a day due to overcharging. Then he was anxious and wanted to check the accounts to see how much money the company had left. But here, he was prevented by Shin. He gave various reasons and wouldn't let him look at the accounts. Thus, although both were directors, one couldn't even see how much money there was. Christopher felt very shocked, but since Shin was also a co-director at the time, he couldn't fire him immediately. Finally, in May 2010, he prepared to sue and simultaneously proposed settlement terms. What were those terms? Shin, admit that you embezzled. Return all the money you overcharged to Joseph's company. Additionally, share all account passwords so we can operate transparently in the future. And from now on, when issuing checks or withdrawing money, always sign together. These were reasonable conditions. Upon hearing this, Shin was cornered, because by now he had lost that money to gambling and had no money to repay. Looking at this, he had to either go to jail or comply with Christopher's wishes. At this critical crossroads, Shin once again made a decision that no one could have imagined. June 2010. Christopher went missing. His parents returned home after a week of travel but didn't find their son. Initially, because he had been very stressed at the company recently, they thought he might have gone on a trip. But there was no word, and his phone was also turned off. Eventually, the parents called his partner Shin, thinking he might know something, and here they heard shocking news. I happened to meet him yesterday, and Christopher told me he had decided to hand over the company to me. He was very stressed, wasn't he? I paid him $1 million for the 50% share he owned, and I bought it. In other words, Christopher was no longer a director. Then, Shin said they had drunk celebration wine at the office the night before, and after that, Christopher had gotten very drunk, but he didn't know where he went afterward. When hearing these things, Christopher's parents felt very confused. Their son had certainly struggled to protect the company, even suing Shin. But that didn't mean he would sell the company, and especially to Shin, who had embezzled. It didn't make sense. But on the second day of his disappearance, June 7th, an email from their son arrived. "Mom, Dad, I've resolved the company's business well. I bought a yacht with the money received from Shin and plan to travel around the world. I'm currently in the Galapagos Islands and will be home in about 3 weeks." And at the end, he wrote, "I was too entangled with the company. Now I'm happy." Seeing this, the parents initially felt relieved, because there had been contact. Subsequently, the son who was supposedly traveling sent emails about once a month. This time, he said he would go to Argentina, Brazil, Costa Rica. Yes, about 6 months passed like this. Then suddenly, Christopher's parents began to feel something was wrong. Strange. Why does our son travel to so many places without ever calling, only communicating via email? With growing suspicion, the father decided to carefully examine every email his son had sent. Upon rereading, he realized what he had suspected. The tone in recent emails was somewhat different, not like his son's usual writing style. Then one day, they received a special email from Christopher's address. In stark contrast to the previous messages full of joy, like, "I'm very happy and living wonderfully, the trip is exciting," this email read, "The past year and a half has been like a nightmare. I've endured too much stress. Now I just want to end my life." The words alluding to death terrified them, and more worryingly, after this email, all contact with Christopher was completely cut off. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, Christopher's parents immediately hired a private detective and simultaneously requested a check of their son's passport records to verify if he was actually traveling around the world as stated. The results shocked them. There was no trace that Christopher had left the United States since June 2010. Additionally, tracing the IP addresses revealed that all the emails they received were sent from within the United States. Immediately, a missing person report was filed with the authorities. The police quickly identified Shin, the colleague who was last known to have met Christopher, as the primary suspect. However, the investigators remained cautious, knowing it was too early to reach a final conclusion. They needed to gather specific evidence before making any accusations. Therefore, the police conducted a secret investigation, and here they heard crucial testimonies from company employees. Around the time Christopher went missing, Shin had suddenly granted special leave to all employees. Why did he suddenly give them time off? The reason given was that the day before, Christopher had gotten drunk and vomited, urinated in the office, and he needed to clean everything up. So, when employees returned to the office after a few days off, they immediately sensed something strange. A heavy stench emanated. This wasn't the usual smell of vomit, and there was an unpleasant fishy smell mixed in. Additionally, apparently to conceal the smell, there was also the smell of scented candles and deodorizers. Meanwhile, there were testimonies from another employee. After the break, when he entered Shin's office, the golf clubs and baseball bat, which were always there, had disappeared. Could they have been murder weapons? The police immediately raided the office and conducted a crime scene investigation. As predicted, large amounts of blood were found on the carpet, ceiling, and walls. DNA test results showed they were all Christopher's. Meanwhile, realizing the police's investigative net was tightening, Shin tried to flee to Canada. But a travel ban had been issued, and fortunately, he was caught right at the airport. But Shin showed a very confident attitude. He asked why they were asking him about Christopher's whereabouts, who had gone traveling. So, the police asked about what had happened between them on the day of the disappearance. Based on his testimony and many other testimonies, the reconstruction of the day's events is as follows. On June 4, 2010, Shin called Christopher to the office, saying he would accept all of Christopher's proposals and they should talk. Thus, the two facing each other had an uncomfortable conversation. But Shin had a different purpose from the beginning. When Christopher was off guard for a moment, he took a golf club and struck, and Christopher died from blood loss. That blood was found all over the office. Afterward, he gave the employees time off and erased all traces, handling the body in the empty office. In such statements, Shin also admitted that Christopher was dead, but he said it wasn't murder caused by him but an act of self-defense. When asked, he explained that while the two were writing the agreement, Christopher suddenly strangled him, and when he pushed Christopher away in self-defense, Christopher's head hit the desk and he died. He justified that because he was being accused of embezzlement, he feared the police would suspect him, so he didn't report it. So the police asked, "Then where is the body now?" But from then on, Shin remained completely silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't say what he had done with the body. Later, the police discovered that Shin had rented a truck and gone to a desert area near the Mexican border. So, they interrogated him. "You dumped the body there, didn't you?" To this, Shin explained, "After Christopher died, I was scared and tried to escape to Mexico, but I changed my mind and turned back." Meanwhile, he still didn't utter a word about where the body was. On November 13th, 2018, the trial for Christopher's murder was held. Why did it take so long? Because the police had difficulty gathering evidence and understanding the situations, as Shin remained silent. The trial also lasted quite long. But finally, the jury decided after a lengthy session that despite the current absence of a body, Shin had killed Christopher. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Shin still claimed it was self-defense, but he would be imprisoned for life. Afterward, Christopher's family visited him many times, and they begged him to tell them where their son's body was. But even then, Shin remained silent. He absolutely wouldn't open his mouth. Perhaps it's because if the body were found and an autopsy performed, his self-defense justification would be destroyed. It's because the lies would be exposed, I think. For the traces of murder can never be hidden. Next is a case that occurred in Japan. The place you see in the current photo is Roppongi Hills, a high-end complex located in the center of Tokyo. Inside, you'll find many cultural facilities such as museums, outdoor squares, cinemas, and shopping centers. Of course, there's also a residential area. It's called Roppongi Hills Residence. After completion in 2003, it became famous when corporate CEOs and entertainment celebrities came to live there. It truly is a symbol of success and wealth. Therefore, there's even a nickname for those who live there, called Hills-zoku, Hills Tribe. Now let me introduce you to a representative figure who shaped the Neo-Hills-zoku style and made this concept famous throughout Japan. That's Yozawa Tsubasa, a young CEO in his early 30s who created a sensation in the business world. In 2013, Yozawa published a book with a shocking title, The Conditions to Earn 100 Million Yen in 1 Second. A title so captivating that one couldn't help but notice. Yozawa introduced himself as the CEO of Free Agent Style Holdings, a company specializing in advertising. With impressive confidence, he proudly declared that his business had brought in over 1 billion yen, approximately $8.6 million, in just 2 short years. This impressive figure quickly drew public attention to the ambitious young CEO. Not long after, interviews in magazines, on television, and other media poured in, helping Yozawa build his reputation and influence. Notably, in every interview, he always emphasized the same message. I want to become an inspiration for young people who are facing difficult lives. This motivational statement became Yozawa's brand, a motto he constantly repeated in every public appearance. And as he wanted, many young people began to dream of becoming like him. They were the same age, but seeing him succeed and live such a luxurious life became a new hope and encouragement. Yozawa boasted that he was living on the highest floor of Roppongi Hill's residence, and not only that, he was simultaneously living in 5 luxury apartments in Tokyo, like the Ritz-Carlton. That meant he didn't own them to rent out. He actually lived in all 5. Additionally, he owned many expensive imported cars like Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Bentley. In fact, it was revealed that he had bought a new Rolls-Royce worth 70 million yen, about $600,000, in cash. At that time, he became a topic on the internet as he was said to be the first buyer in Japan. Afterward, he posted photos boasting relationships with celebrities on social media and continued posting photos dating models. So here, we have a question. Yozawa claimed to be a self-made entrepreneur. How did he earn so much money? According to his own book, the principle to earn 100 million yen, about $860,000, in 1 second is quite simple. What is it? Running websites or blogs and placing advertisements, then receiving advertising money from companies. In fact, there's nothing wrong with this method. It's indeed an effective marketing method, and many people profit from it. But the key point is, how did he achieve such large profits in a short time? Yozawa was very confident. If you follow the method I propose, you can also earn these billions of yen. I will share the secret with you. But he didn't share it for free. Yozawa began organizing lectures on success. The tuition was 300,000 yen, about $2,600 per person. Additionally, if you studied with friends, he would pay you a 50,000 yen, about $430 bonus. Look at the advertisement for this lecture. With just 30 minutes a day, just by copying and pasting, you can earn 30 million yen, about $258,000 per month. And he said it's something everyone can do. This sounds a bit like a scam. In reality, all of this was an elaborate act. The harsh truth behind Yozawa's glamorous appearance was a castle built on sand. The luxurious office he frequently showed off on social media was just a short-term rental space with the sole purpose of posing for photos. His actual office was a small, dilapidated building with surprisingly cheap rent. The luxury goods and expensive imported cars he continuously flaunted were also just part of the scam. Most of them were used items, and what's more amazing, Yozawa would often sell them right after completing the photo shoot to post on social media, all just to create a facade of a wealthy life that didn't actually exist. The sophistication in how Yozawa staged his image was astonishing. When signing contracts to buy cars, he always had a clear intention: to take photos so that the license plate was clearly visible in the frame, then share widely as undeniable proof that this is my property. As for the photos with celebrities, true, Yozawa had some relationships with artists, but the truth behind those intimate pictures was quite harsh. Most were just superficial relationships, fleeting encounters at public events or television programs, ending with the exchange of business cards for social etiquette. But what did people who saw these photos think? Wow, Yozawa is really amazing. If I attend his lecture, I can also succeed like him. They were captivated, unaware of the reality. People enthusiastically embraced his lectures. They sold very well. In fact, he achieved an annual revenue of 1 billion yen, about $8.6 million. Now he had truly become wealthy. However, how long could Yozawa's glamorous game last? How could someone who had never really succeeded stand to teach others about success? The truth finally had to face the light. In April 2014, a shocking announcement appeared on Yozawa's Facebook page. My money is completely exhausted. I'm bankrupt because I can't pay taxes. This was a big shock to those who believed in the millionaire image he had built. It turns out, although Yozawa's lecture activities had indeed generated significant revenue, successful business is not just about making money, it's also about managing cash flow wisely. At one point, he faced a huge tax bomb, including corporate and income taxes for which he had never prepared sufficient resources to pay. This is a common dilemma for those doing illegal business. While they seek to scam for money, they rarely comply with tax regulations. It was the tax system, not the scam victims, that finally exposed the truth about Yozawa's empire. Additionally, the cost to maintain his luxurious image had skyrocketed over time. The rent for luxury apartments, the cost of renting fancy cars, and countless other expenses to maintain the appearance of a successful businessman had devoured most of the revenue. Yozawa had fallen into a vicious cycle. The more famous he became, the more he needed to spend to maintain his image, and the more he spent, the more financially burdensome it became uncontrollable. Finally, he couldn't resolve a debt amounting to 200,000 yen, about $1,720, and filed for bankruptcy. To make matters worse, during this time, he also suffered significant losses in foreign stock investments. So Yozawa, who taught the method to earn 100 million yen, about $860,000, in a second, lost everything in a second. So then, when these facts were revealed, who was most shocked? It was the students, the victims who had paid expensive tuition to learn the secret of success from him. Sadly, many of them were housewives and elderly people unfamiliar with the internet. They paid 300,000 yen, about $2,600, to Yozawa to learn online marketing methods. But most were either fanciful or empty, boring content. They only realized this afterward. It turns out Yozawa had hired people to write comments. When there were negative reviews about the lecture, such as, "With this content, you can find it in any success book. You can find it on the internet," he hired people to knock down these comments. Finally, knowing all this, the students were extremely angry and sued him together. But surprisingly, Yozawa wasn't punished. In Japan, people like Yozawa are called information merchants. What is an information merchant? Simply put, it's the act of providing information to others and making money from it. But according to Japanese criminal law, it's very difficult to prove that this information was initially created with the intent to defraud. Additionally, Yozawa had been very careful in setting up refund regulations for his lectures from the beginning, so there was no legal violation. If one had to find a charge, it would only be excessive advertising. Yozawa was arrested only once. In September 2013, he was charged with slapping a driver, causing minor injuries. But once again, he managed the situation and received no significant punishment. Of course, people, although I'm describing Yozawa as a scammer, from his perspective, he might say, "I'm not a scammer, but a clever person." So, what kind of life did he lead? Yozawa was born on November 11, 1982, and was an excellent graduate from Waseda University, one of Japan's top universities. Yozawa also described his process of entering Waseda University quite dramatically. He said that when he was young, he was so poor that he was handed over to relatives, helping with housework in a guest house and living a difficult life with very little pocket money. According to Yozawa's account, his youth was a journey full of irregularities. As he entered his teens, he began socializing with rebellious youth groups and quickly became a member of a motorcycle gang, an image completely opposite to the successful businessman he would later become. As predicted, formal education was neglected, and he dropped out of school midway. However, what makes Yozawa's story special is the claim that even during his rebellious and extravagant life, he maintained the habit of saving money, an incredible detail, but one that plays an important role in his self-made story. By the age of 17, around 2000, Yozawa claimed he had accumulated about 7 million yen, about $60,000, a considerable sum for a teenager. Although he returned to high school, he lasted only 3 days before dropping out again. Then, a major turning point occurred. After a long period of reflection, he suddenly realized that to truly succeed in life, a prestigious university degree was essential. With new determination, he devoted all his energy to preparing for the graduation exam. After just 9 months of relentless study, in January 2003, he achieved an amazing feat, being accepted into Waseda University, one of Japan's most prestigious universities. Yozawa's intelligence and ability to seize business opportunities were evident during his university years. Not just focusing on studying, he started an online store specializing in men's clothing. Initially, this project brought considerable profit, but eventually couldn't avoid the fate of bankruptcy. Despite failing, Yozawa claimed that this failure opened a new door of understanding about the profit potential of online advertising, a valuable lesson that shaped his next direction. With lessons from his first failure, he established Free Agent Style Holdings, a company that would later become the foundation for his reputation. However, as a recurring theme in Yozawa's business story, this company also eventually couldn't escape the fate of bankruptcy. After his fraudulent behavior was discovered, a famous Japanese comic called Ushijima the Loan Shark created a character and story based on Yozawa. He was portrayed as an evil scammer, but surprisingly, Yozawa agreed to allow this publication. Even when he was portrayed completely as a villain, he still considered it a good opportunity to make money. I don't know if this is a good mental state, or if he simply liked fame, but he certainly was someone who liked attention. Yozawa's turbulent life had another amazing turning point, which is his current situation. In 2014, after his empire of lies collapsed, Yozawa officially declared bankruptcy. Many thought this was the end of the scammer's story, that he had lost everything and returned with two empty hands. But there's also speculation that he cleverly hid assets in a safe place, out of reach of creditors. During this dark period, beside Yozawa was a girlfriend who worked as a race car model. As expected, she also had to endure many criticisms and negative comments for being associated with a notorious scammer. However, contrary to all predictions, the couple proceeded to marriage. Subsequent information shows that the newlywed couple left Japan, stopping in Singapore before settling in Dubai, a paradise for the super rich. Here, Yozawa is said to have shifted to the booming cryptocurrency investment field and started a new chapter in his life. Surprisingly, these investments seem to have brought great success. According to some sources, his current assets are estimated at 6.2 billion yen, about $53.3 million. A huge figure for someone who once declared bankruptcy. Of course, no one can verify the authenticity of this information. It's ironic that someone who once scammed by selling illusory lectures on success could actually become wealthy after all the scandals. In a recent interview, Yozawa is said to have frankly admitted his past. Yes, I was once a scammer. However, he still confidently asserts that he is currently making money entirely legally through legitimate investments. To date, Yozawa maintains a strong presence on social media platforms, YouTube channel, and a member-only blog, where he continues to share wealth-building secrets. It seems that at any time, he doesn't give up the role of a success counselor, whether it's real or fake. Edward Shin and Yozawa Tsubasa, two people with successful appearances but hiding dark natures, have shown us the downsides of insatiable greed and obsession with money. Edward Shin, with the facade of an exemplary Christian and successful businessman, didn't stop at fraud, but proceeded to the most brutal act, taking the life of his talented colleague Christopher Smith. Yozawa Tsubasa, although not committing murder, deceived and hurt the trust of hundreds of young Japanese people. With the mask of a successful businessman, he sold hollow dreams of quick success and easy wealth. In the end, these two stories remind us that, regardless of where in the world, the value of a person doesn't lie in what they own or the appearance they present, but in their actions and the real impact they have on others' lives. As we pursue success, it's equally important to ensure that the path we choose doesn't harm others and that we don't lose ourselves in the process. And those are the two cases for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next videos.